So today I'm gonna be talking about king and pawn endgames, and hopefully we'll get to switch topics and talk more about some tactical stuff too. I looked at some games about 20 years ago, so those should be fun if we can show them. So this is the first time I'm teaching this the king and pawn endgame class, so hopefully I'm not going too easy or too hard. So I'll be reading the chats, so just keep sending me recommendations, questions, anything. Hi Kini. Alright, so the first position that we have is thinking about the rules. So this one is black to move. I'm gonna flip the board so you have an easier time thinking about it. I'm gonna be reading the chats on YouTube, and so just send me a line of, first of all, what do you think should be happening? What are the things you should look out for? What do you think is the result gonna be? And ideally, few moves in one line. Cool. So I'm already getting correct responses. Ideally, for those of you that this is kind of easy, just let me know what are the things that you're looking out for. For example, the answer that I'm looking for here is a position. So ideally, you would want to look out for a position, and you would want to be careful about that. And yep, thank you, Rawant. Sorry for the pronunciation. Okay, so basically we want to play king e7 to hold that position, and even if you lose this pawn, it's perfectly okay as long as you keep this opposition, and you would simply hold your ground. Thank you. And eventually it would end in a stalemate. Alright, thank you for all of you who responded to me. So let's go for the next one. This one is white to move, and this is another one of those super basic ones that you should all have a very easy time figuring out. Yep. So yeah, this is white to move, and so the problem is that you don't have that opposition, and even if you manage to get your pawn to b7, king a7, and after king c7, it's a stalemate because black can't really go anywhere. So another way to think about it is if you were to do anything else, if even right now it was black to move, black would simply just play king c8. So if this was black to move, black would just play king c8, and black would still hold the draw. So, yep. I'm getting a suggestion from Paul about king d7. So even if you were to play king d7, just king b7 is holding it. I'm curious, king a8, how would you want to continue? Because if king c7 is still a position and draw, if king c8 opposition, still a stalemate, king c7 still again stalemate. So you don't really have any way of breaking in, and one of those really important things in endgame, especially in king and pawn endgame, is being able to break in, and in this situation you don't really have that chance. Thank you. So let's hop on to the next one, and yep. So this is what I was talking about. If it was black to move, black would just play king c8, and hold the draw. So now this one is white to move. It's still pretty easy, but just a really good warm-up, so please do a little bit of calculation, send me a line, and preferably send me the result that you think is going to happen, and we'll go from there. I am reading the chats, so again, a heads up to everybody, I do have problem pronunciating, so I apologize in advance. Okay, so I'm getting the first suggestion of draw from Chavi Torasin. Again, I'm sorry for the pronunciations. So the first thing that you should think about is just looking at the position. You should automatically realize that this pawn is under attack for black, and the first things that you should consider should be taking this pawn, either with the king or the pawn. So the problem is if you take it with the king, black king is close enough to be able to get to a8, for example, like this. So taking with the king doesn't really make any logical sense because you would have no way of making a progress. If your king was, for example, on b6, this position is winning because your king is kind of like holding black's king away so you can make a queen, but that is not realistic in this position. So the first move that you should automatically know by elimination of other moves is taking the pawn, back with the pawn, and after, for example, king d6, how would you want to bring your king in? Because if you play king c4, there's king c6, and then there's opposition. So I'm getting different lines. I'm going to read over those right now. So the first one, I have ab4, king a4, king a5. Yes, I think that's the correct way to go forward. Paul is giving a little bit more detailed line of king a4 and king a5. Yes. Mr. Manny Low C is also correct. Brandon is also correct. So yeah, basically you wouldn't want to bring your king to c4 because this would take away any chance of basically tricking your opponents and being able to get into getting your king in there to protect the pathway for the pawn. So king a4, king c6, now you bring your king to a5. Now black is kind of stuck. If black plays king c7, you can simply play king a6. King c6, you just give the check, and this is totally winning because your king is protecting all of the squares that the pawn is going to go to. So king c7 doesn't work. If king b7, you would simply play king b5, hold that position, king c7, now king a6, king b8, king b6. So the most important thing is for you to not start rushing the pawn, because I know it's a very basic concept and we all try not to do it and we've all heard about it before, but it's really important to really know that the difference between half a point or the full point is for you to not rush it and to first prepare it. Now the king, if king a8, king c7, and now you push the pawn. And now again be careful because if b6, it's a stalemate. So here, for example, king a8, what you could try to do is, for example, hold on, actually I'm gonna ask you what you should do. I don't want to give everything out. So let's say, for example, in this position after king a8, so b6 would make a stalemate. How do you think white should play? And there's an app for endgame training. Oh, great. I used to do a lot of different applications too. So yeah, I agree with bringing the king back, but king c6 or king b6? because if king b6, then king b8, king a6, king could go to a8 maybe. So that's just something to think about. Okay, so I'm getting king b6, which I think is correct because it forces everything. King b8, you just play king a6, king a8, and now the king has to go away, which is ideal. Next move you make the queen. So yeah, just be careful with these little traps. Okay. Yep. Great. Alright, on to the next one. Okay, so this one is black to move. This is again something very basic understanding of the square. So whoops. So this the easiest way to think about it is this like there's this square. If the king isn't in it, then white will manage to easily make the pawn promote to a queen, and if the king is in it, then the pawn will be taken. So basically it's about black being on time. So basically any of king d6, d7 or d8 actually does draw the game. So let's look at king d7 for example. You push and very simply the king will be in the square. Again, it's one of those really easy concepts, but when the position gets a slightly more challenging, then it's kind of hard for you to completely know about it. Hopefully I will get to the positions that I have prepared that are a little bit tactical as well. Alright. Okay, so this one is white to move. Now we're getting to the concept of breakthrough. I earlier mentioned the concept of breakthrough, and I talked about it more as in the sense of just pieces, kings, pawns, anything. So one way that you can think about it is this is one of those ideas of breakthrough. So now you're combining the ideas of a position and that square, and now you're putting it in work to idea of breakthrough. So yep, let's see some suggestions. Thank you. I like talking about endgames. So yeah, so far I have two different moves, and yeah, so you do have to think about both of these moves. Both a6 and b6 are worth considering, and if you already know the idea of breakthrough, you would know that b6 is the winning move, simply because after take a6 and the king just can't get into this, the king just can't get to the square fast enough. So that's the easiest way to think about it. And the difference is if you play a6 first, now there is king d7. And I do believe that this is still winning because of b6 take a7, but just b6 is more accurate, and it would be a good practice for your future references. Because okay, right now the king is really far and king c6 or king c8 wouldn't work, but there are different other positions that similar ideas you would have to be very, very accurate in order to be able to actually get the full point. So yeah, b6 is the most accurate one. Alright, let's see what else we got. Okay, this one is black to move, and the main idea is about Zugzwang, because right now if it is white to move, the pawns are all kind of stuck together, so white would have to take the king back. Same for black. If it's black to move, black would have to move the king, but the problem is if you play king c6, there's king e5. If you play king e6, there's king c5. So far the ideas that we've seen are, we talked about the opposition, which is one of the main ones. We talked about the square, the breakthrough, and the Zugzwang. And in a real game, you would most likely have a combination of all of them. But it's really important to be able to use those to, for example, trick your opponents. Because, for example, let's think if this was white to move in this position, you could think about how to trick your opponents, because white to move, you would have to bring your king back. And for example, whoops, let's say you would bring your king back, and this is one way that you can trick your opponents with triangle. And the same idea if you are as black and you know that your opponent is going to try this triangle, is that you would also try and hold like a triangle. So it's like these two squares are kind of poisoned. So as soon as the king goes to d4, you would, as black, you would ideally want to place your king to d6, so you won't let the opponents come in c5 or e5. And same for white. You would want your king to be ready, so if black goes to king d6, you would play king d4. So I think of them as poison squares. So yeah, I think they have a better name I've seen in different books, but I mean it's poison, so whoops. Just a second. Alright. Well, it kind of depends, because if it's white to move, white has the chance to kind of try and trick the opponent with the triangle, but if the opponent makes all the right moves, then it's a draw. So now the technical term for what we're about to see is called squeeze. So this one is still very doable, but I'm just gonna tell you to use the ideas that we've seen so far and combine those, and ideally give me a full line with whites and black moves. So yeah, be right here. Oh yeah, mine squares. I have trouble pronouncing it, but yes, this is white to move. So if I forget to say whose move it is by accident, usually just look at this, if the first line is 1 or 8. If it's 8, means that, well, it's black to move. If it's 1, white to move. Well, yeah, Hamid is he's right, and well, he already said his rating is almost 2100, so, well, he is right. No wonder he can see all of these. So yeah, basically you should play king d6. You're gonna tying your opponent's hands, aka squeezing, and the idea is that opponent can't really move the king, because if you move the king, I will just take your pawn, and if you try to push the pawns, I will just keep the pressure on your pawn on c5, and just continue to wait until you run out of moves. So basically you get into Zugzwang, and now I first eat your queenside pawn, and then I'll simply go and push my pawns. And depending on what you do, because even if you manage to get this somewhat called like stalemate, you can just come and take the other pawns. And this is winning because, for example, let's say we play very recklessly and just keep pushing the pawn, which you shouldn't. But the good news is that you have this move ready. So yeah. I got another suggestion for first move g4. I think g4 is also very interesting, but it's slightly more accurate if you just keep moving with the king, so you keep both of the pawns, because you don't want to exchange them off the board. And yeah, well, I'm glad I'm getting so many suggestions. Alright, let's jump to the next one. Okay, this one is black to move. I flipped the board, so this would be the 8th rank right now. So this is again about opposition, but a little bit more advanced than the simple just king, one pawn and king. So please give me a line for this one. Okay, so I'm getting suggestions of h4 and possibly king g6 or f6. Well, first of all, do you think white can win this game? I mean, do you think black can hold this game? Okay, so we have a lot of people thinking black can hold. Alright, let's see. So, the first one I think it's should be king f5, and after king f3, king e5, because as black you would want white to push these pawns. So if white pushes these pawns, it's a good thing for you, because you can try to keep holding the position, and if the pawn is in front of the king, that's a good thing. You just keep that position, and this is gonna end in a stalemate. So white shouldn't push the pawns, and so white should keep playing with the king. And now after king d4, king f6, white can try to bring the king in a little bit more. And now, what do you think? Do you think it's still a draw or white can win? And preferably give me a full line of, if you think it's a draw, how do you think it is, with which moves that white should do, and if you think it's white winning, then give me the best moves for black, please. In this position, black just played king f6, so it's white to move. So you think, wait, hold on. It is white to move in this position. Let me flip the board if it makes it any easier. Okay, so yeah, Paul is correct. h4 should be. And yes, white does win. Because h4, king g6, king comes to e5. And you try to hold down your fort, but after losing both of your pawns, the h pawn and g pawn will actually be good enough to win this game for white. So thank you for participating. Okay, I'm gonna wait a second if anyone has questions, and if not, we'll just move to the next one. So this one is white to move, and it is a position, but it's a little more I want to say advanced than usual. It was not a draw, the last one, because it was winning. Okay, I'm gonna go back because I'm just getting the questions due to the delay. So the problem is black did play the best moves. So this is the beginning position. These are the best moves that black is trying to force white into pushing the pawns. Black is holding that position, and the key thing is this h4, because white has that extra tempi, and you would have to play king g6, because otherwise anywhere else that you go with your king g5 would follow. So let's say king goes to g6, and you would have to go back, and even if you keep trying to keep the white king away from the g5 square, there's king f6, and white will eventually get this. Oh, so you are asking about first move h4. Okay, so h4, g4 should be is the only move. King d3. Is this the move I'm looking at? King g3, king h3, g6, king h2, g7. The problem is white's king is really close. Give me a second to think about this. No, the problem is even with queen g3 this wins. Let's say you have to play h2, check. King here, king e2. You make queen, it's mates. Yeah. The problem, well, for example, if the white king was very far away, or even slightly farther away, yes, this would have been a draw. But white king is really close, and at the end this king e2 helps white win. So yeah. Alright. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one is white to move. It is again the same concepts of opposition and everything. So preferably give me a full line. I'm getting a question about not promoting to knight. Well, queen against knight will win regardless. So even if you would make the knight, I could just play king e1 in that position for fragrance enthusiast. Nice. If you remember the position, I could just play king e1, and your knight, you're still in kind of Zugzwang. You move the knight, I can mate you or take the knight. So, okay. For this position, yes, Paul, you are right. And our... Yeah, so a5, king b7, and king d6. So what if king goes to b8? King c6, king a7, king b6. So you are applying the same methods that we used on the previous game in this one. So great, thank you all for answering. So this one, it's just the idea that this doesn't matter who's depending on whose move it is. If it's white to move, white's gonna move this king and lose the pawn. If it's black to move, black has to move the king and lose the pawn. So it's just an idea. So now we are gonna talk a little about barriers. This one is black to move, and as you can see, black has one more pawn, but everything is kind of stuck. These c4 pawn is protecting d5 square, f4 pawn is protecting e5 square, so you kind of have to be very creative on how and if you can actually break through. So, yep, please give me a line and a suggestion for who's gonna win or what's the result gonna be. Good chess books. Well, it kind of depends what topic you're working on. For openings, for tactics, for endgames, because for example, one of my favorite things to just do is to just get strategy books, and the ones that are just books with commentary, like tournament games commentary, and I would just read over those, and I would learn the opening, the end game, the middle game, all of it. So I kind of like that. One of the ones that I really liked was one of the Gelfand. The Gelfand wrote 2 books. I don't know if the third one came out yet, but he wrote some books about defense and attack and those stuff, and those were really good. Another thing, one of my other favorite books is the Fisher's 60 Memorable Games, because he wrote it and he explained it in his own words about his games, so that was pretty cool for me. Thank you, Nixon. I might, who knows. Okay, so I got some suggestions that this is going to be a draw because you simply can't break through, and yes, that is correct. So this is the only logical way black could try to want to bring the king in, which doesn't work because white is just in time to block. Alright, so now we're getting into the concept of tempo, well, spare tempo. So now this is again black to move. Please think about what move would you want to do as black, since you have the opposition and all. Shouldn't be that hard to find, but yeah. Okay, so we are talking about c6. Great. I'm glad everybody agrees on that. So the idea is, after c6, white's kind of stuck. It doesn't matter what white does, black's going to win. King d3, king f4. If king goes to f3, king d4, and the pawn falls, and the rest we've already seen how easy it can be to win. Alright, next one. Okay, so this one is somehow a mix of everything we've seen so far. So please take a second and figure out the line and give me the line. So hopefully you all can see it. Okay, so I'm getting ideas of white wins, and the main move that we're thinking about is b5. Alright, thank you, but preferably give me a full line, like b5, what should black do, and then what would white do, at least 3-4 moves, because it's endgame, so it should be easy to look at for both colors. Okay, so the idea, yes, hop IT is to create a pass pawn and go eat the others. Yep, that is correct. So b5, take, and then we've seen something similar to this before, and you would just go eat pretty much all of the pawns. Yep, you were right. Thank you. So now we're going to talk about how important it is to have an outside passed pawn. So it also shares the same idea that we just saw in the other puzzle. So preferably just give me a line quickly so we can go to the next one and see as much as king and pawns possible. So just remember, having a passed pawn, outside passed pawn in endgame, especially king and pawn endgame, is extremely important. Yep, I am getting ideas already of a5, and you would kind of distract the king and take the initiative over here, get your king far enough so you can push your g pawn, and yep, yeah, very well said by fragrance enthusiast. So yep, you're just gonna distract it and then shoulder away when the king comes in. Couldn't have said it better myself. So this one takes a little bit more calculation, even though it's less pieces. So this one is black to move, and please tell me what do you think is the result gonna be, and ideally a line. Okay. Just a heads up, in about 10 minutes we are gonna switch to tactics. Okay, so I'm getting the idea of king d4 and black wins. Yeah, right? Does everybody agree on that? Okay, so another great line from Paul. King d4, king e2, correct. King c3 is the key move. And so you're kind of just keeping the king away, shouldering it, basically shouldering, shoulder away. So after king d3, you get b5 first. It's important not to take the king first, because then you would, your pawn would kind of get stuck. This is still winnable, just you have to play king a4, and just be careful to first play b6, so you have an extra tempi moving forward. For example, you can play b5 and bring the king in, and the rest should be easy enough to do. And we've done this before, and yay. Alright. So this is called the feint. This is white to move. So for me the idea is kind of clear, because you want to try and keep your pawn as long as possible and take that try and take the black's pawn, but I really don't want to give out the move. So okay, so we're thinking black wins, but it's white to move. So preferably give me ideas on what white should do. Okay, so first move should be king e6. Can anybody tell me why? Alright, great. So if king e6, yep, if you take king d5, and I'm gonna take your pawn away. So if you push b4, what about b4? Yep. So if b4, you get f5, and you both manage to make queens just in time, and this is going to be a draw. Alright, thank you everybody who gave me ideas and participated. Okay, so this is supposedly called outflanking, and this is black to move. You can see how advanced black's pawn is, but at the same time how advanced white king is. So what do you think is going to be the results? So it is black to move. So you think white's going to win? Interesting. Preferably give me a line so we can go over that line. Again, it is black to move. Okay, so we're thinking about king f5, king f7, and king f5, right? So the king kind of has to go to e7, king g6, king e8, king f6, king d7, and so yes, the problem is you lose the d6 pawn and you can't keep it, and eventually all of those pawns fall. So yep. So you all were correct. This is winning for white, and simply because early on, eventually this d6 pawn is going to fall. And it's not gonna be, you can't, it's kind of impossible to try and bring the king all the way to the other part of the board. Would be very nice, but it's really unrealistic. Because let's say you play king c7 and you just can't, you're not going to be in time. So yep, white is winning. And we're finally at the lovely triangle that we talked about. Triangulation, I think that's the, yep. Okay, so this is white to move, and please give me a line. Okay, so we are getting suggestions of king c3. And then king d2 is another suggestion, and king e3. So these are the three main suggestions. So the thing that you should realize is that you want this exact same position, just black to move. So black would have to break the position and move the king. So the correct move is king d2 indeed. And the problem is, well, black has to keep the king in these squares, because if king d4, there's b6. So after king d6, you play king c2 because black can't play king c6, and then you get king c3. So now you are getting the opposition, and this is how you win. So you did the opposition, you did the breakthrough, and now you're gonna take the other pawn. So this one is gonna be, I think, our last puzzle before we move to tactics. Are we switching, or okay? So please give me line for this one. This one is supposed to be called underpass, so that should give you an idea. And make sure to look for the tactic class that's gonna happen just in a few minutes after this one. So yep. Alright, so most of the people are agreeing on king f2, king d6, king g3. If king e5, we have an idea from Paul to do the king h4, and I think Anna and Hamid. So yep, pretty much everybody got it. Alright, I am glad that I had around 80 viewers. Thank you for tuning in. We are gonna switch to tactics, but it's we're gonna end this video and start a new one, I believe. Yep. So what? So yeah, just stick around and make sure to watch that one. I have some cool tactics with timers and everything. So yeah, I'm gonna sit here.